This is the Sri Ramana Maharshi Satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and deeply meditate. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm not a teacher or a guru, just someone who loves this teaching and wants to share with like minded people. I'm reviewing and commenting on the book Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi, and this is from Talk 43 today. Ramana Maharshi's words. First, Ramana is asked, kindly instruct me as to how the mind may be controlled. The Maharshi responds, there are two methods. One is to see what the mind is, then it subsides. The second is to fix your attention on something, then the mind remains quiet. The discussion continues with the statement, men of the world that we have some kind of grief or another and do not know how to get over it. We pray to God and are still not satisfied. What can we do? Ramana says, trust God. The devotee says, we surrender, but still there is no help. And Ramana replies, yes, if you have surrendered, you must be able to abide by the will of God and not make a grievance of what may not please you. Things may turn out differently from what they look apparently. And the devotee says, but we are worldly. There is the wife, there are the children, friends, and relatives. We cannot ignore their existence and resign ourselves to divine will without retaining some little of the personality in us. Ramana says that means you have not surrendered as professed by you. You must only trust God. The dialogue continues. Swamiji, I have read Brunton's book, A Certain Secret India, and was much impressed by the last chapter where he said that it's possible to be conscious without thinking. I know that one can think, remaining forgetful of the physical body. Can one think without the mind? Is it possible to gain that consciousness which is beyond thoughts? The Maharshi says, yes, there is only one consciousness which subsists in the waking, dream, and sleep states. In sleep, there is no I. The I thought arises on waking, and then the world appears. Where was this I in sleep? Was it there or was it not? It must have been there also, but not in the way you feel now. The present is only the I thought, whereas the sleeping I is the real I. It subsists all through. It is consciousness. It is, if it is known, you will see that It is beyond thoughts. The devotee asks, can we think without the mind? And Ramana says, thoughts may be like any other activities, not disturbing to the supreme consciousness. Then the devotee asks, how shall we correlate the higher experience with the lower experience, meaning the spiritual experience with mundane affairs? Ramana says, there is only one experience. What are the worldly experiences but those built upon the false I? Ask the most successful man in the world if he knows itself. He will say no. What can anyone know without knowing the self? All worldly knowledge is built upon such a flimsy foundation. And finally, Ramana is asked how to know the real I as distinct from the false I. And Maharshi replies, is there anyone who is not aware of himself? Each one knows, but yet does not know the self. A strange paradox. The master added later, if inquiry is made whether mind exists, it will be found that mind does not exist. That is control of mind. Otherwise, if the mind is taken to exist and one seeks to control it, it amounts to mind controlling the mind, just like a thief turning out to be a policeman to catch the thief that is himself. Mind persists in that way alone, but eludes itself. This talk starts with a question that comes again and again. Kindly instruct me as to how the mind may be controlled. To which Ramana responds, there are two methods. One is to see what the mind is, then it subsides. The other is to fix your attention on something, then the mind remains quiet. What Ramana did not say here, but has said at other times, is that one is mental quiet that is temporary, and the other can be permanent. Concentration quiets the mind as long as concentration is continued. But the concentration cannot be kept up all the time, even if you can sustain it during the waking state, it will be broken during deep sleep and dream. The mind, though, can be made quiet altogether when you realize the mind was never real, never had any innate existence of its own to begin with. It is just the reality and consciousness of the self superimposed onto the imagined individual person. The seeming reality of the mind is based on the actual reality that you are. It is borrowed, so to speak. The devotee continues, men of the world that we are, we have some kind of grief for another and do not know how to get over it. We pray to God and are still not satisfied. What can we do? Maharshi's answer is trust God. I think this means something like trust the universe, God, Brahman, Shiva, the universe. The name doesn't matter. Trust God. The devotee is still not satisfied with this response and keeps probing, saying, "We surrender, but there is no help." And Ramana replies, "Yes, if you have surrendered, you must be able to abide by the will of God and not make a grievance of what may not please you." Ramana says that surrender means accepting what is given to you by God. As long as you want to get what you desire, then you haven't surrendered. The devotee continues with his complaint, saying, "We cannot ignore their existence and resign ourselves to divine will," to which Ramana responds, "That means you have not surrendered as professed by you. You must only trust God." Surrender means trust. Surrender means putting your individual desires down. Surrender means, as in the Christian Lord prayer, "Thy will be done." Thy will, not my will. This surrender is surrender of the ego, surrender of the sense of my or mine. It diminishes the ego, just like inquiry. Both can remove the ego. Then the Maharshi is asked, can one think without the mind? Is it possible to gain that consciousness which is beyond thoughts? Ramana says, yes, there is only one consciousness which subsists in the waking, dream, and sleep states. There is only one consciousness. There is only one. Can you find more than this? Are you one, or is there one to know the other? Ramana goes on to say, thoughts may be like any other activities, not disturbing the supreme consciousness. Thoughts do not touch or disturb the unmoving consciousness that we are. How could they? Thoughts are more like passing clouds. Even activities don't disturb the consciousness. Ramana then turns to a discussion of identity of the seeming I, saying, in deep sleep there is no I. The I thought arises on waking, and then the world appears. Where was this I in sleep? This I thought is not continuous. It is not there all the time. In fact, we all go through periods every day where it's gone altogether. How can what comes and goes be your identity? Do you go away when you sleep? Or is the mind just dormant? Ramana continues, was it there or was it not? It must have been there also, but not in the way you feel now. The present is only the I thought, whereas the sleeping I is the real I. It subsists all through. It is consciousness. If it is known, you will see that it is beyond thoughts. Of course, being and consciousness are there in deep sleep. The mind and ego are not with the mind dormant and sleeping. The mind is what we know erroneously as our identity. When inactive, from the mind's feeling, as it were, as is it like we weren't there? But we know we slept well. Where does this knowledge come from when the mind is dormant? Then Ramana is asked about spiritual and mundane experience, to which he says there is only one experience. You can't know the ego I without also knowing the self. The self is the base, the substratum on which everything appears. And finally, Ramana is asked how to know the real I as distinct from the false I. Ramana turns to inquiry. If the inquiry is made whether mind exists, it will be found that mind does not exist. That is control of mind. Otherwise, if the mind is taken to exist and one seeks to control it, it amounts to mind controlling the mind, like a thief turning out to be a policeman to catch the thief. You need to know what is true. You need to know yourself. When the false I is known to be false, then everything that springs from it, like the idea of a mind that knows reality, a mind that knows the totality beyond itself, beyond its objects of awareness, this mind is also false. This mind has no reality. Now we'll listen to my teacher Nome with a discourse, Being Free from Thought.
The self is being, and being is free from thought. Therefore, the instruction from the Maharshi to remain free from thought signifies abidance as unalloyed being. Abidance as being, as the unconceived self, is true knowledge. True knowledge is free from thought. It is that state in which there is no division by thought, in which thought does not exist. It can never be thought of, just as being can never be conceived. In thought, there is a possibility of limitation or bondage. Free from thought, there is no such thing. In thought there is I and this, the assumption of individuality being the primal thought to which all other thoughts are appended, or for which all other thoughts are. Being has no I and this, no individual, and nothing objective to it. All possible doubts about one's own real nature are merely thoughts of such, not reality, while true knowledge is doubtless. In thought alone is there the conception of being in one state or another. Real being is stateless. Having neither a waking, dreaming, deep sleep, living, dead, or any other state. The very idea that thought exists is itself an idea, a thought. In true being, nothing of the kind has ever occurred. No more than divisions can be made in vast open space. To inquire and know yourself is to no longer imagine yourself within the context of thought. It is not to indulge in thought. It is not to suppress thought. It has nothing to do with thought. For true knowledge deals with the reality of being. And thought is something completely illusory. What do you supposedly know about the world? Isn't it just a compilation of thought? What do you know about anything else, anything other? Isn't it just the idea of it? When that idea is not present, you say you don't know it. When you have the idea, you say you know it. But in either case, it is just a state of thought. True knowledge is beyond such so-called knowledge and ignorance. True knowledge is of real being, which is never an I, an individual, and never a this, something objective. Therefore, to remain free from thought signifies remaining in that wisdom which is non-objective, and in which there is no misidentification whatsoever. If you can first perceive that you cannot be thought, but you are the silent witness of thought, of the nature of consciousness, this is very wise. If you further pursue an inquiry into the nature of that self or consciousness, and remove from its definition Everything conceived, every kind of thought, including the thought of the wit nest. What remains is pure consciousness, which is identical with being. If you retain the idea, sometimes I am the witness, sometimes I am not, that's just thought. Know yourself in a manner beyond thought. If there is the conception, sometimes I'm abiding in the self, and sometimes I am not, that's just thought. The self has no such modification. Know yourself as you are, not with a bunch of thoughts. Already you know yourself as existing without the need to think of it. Relinquish the needless. The attempt to define yourself or reality with an idea. What remains, which is what truly is, of the nature of unlimited being, consciousness, bliss, is yourself, is real existence. This existence can never be conceived, is always self-luminous or self-known.
Now we'll take a few minutes and inquire. Just quiet yourself and take a long breath. Feel your breath. Long exhale. And notice that you exist, and you know that you exist. And now inquire, investigate within yourself. Do you know your thoughts? Do your thoughts know you? Your thoughts come and go. What does not? Your thoughts begin and end. What does not? Who am I? What is the nature of my existence? All right. Now a short chant. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Comments or discussion?
It's almost like any comment falls short.
Yeah. Well, I was considering how we give power to thoughts that can make us happy or miserable. And yet we can ignore, if we ignore the thought, somehow it has no power to get even with us for ignoring it.
Yes, yes.
It's a big phony.
And it's funny to me that for the thought to annoy us, first we have to pump it up.
And we have to believe in its reality. It's just so
Yes.
bizarre.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm starting to really see them for what they are. And they're ephemeral.
Uh-huh.
When I think about how much of my life was caught up in the drama, I'm just very grateful to have found the door out.
Uh-huh. And it's funny that the drama is all made up.
It is. Yeah. But it can sure give us a bad time while it's happening. It's funny.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my. A lot to sit with.
You know, I'm still finding talks with Ramana to be a very good source. And it seems to me that the questions we're hearing are, many of them are like the questions that we have had. I think they're like the questions we heard being asked to Nome.
Yep.
And I appreciate that, you know, someone made the effort over years to collect this stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, amazing.
You know, so I continue to give thanks for that. That was before the days of videos on YouTube.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
But still, someone collected it, and it's not a small effort.
no. And you know, we received so directly Ramana's work. It's not like it's gone through different languages over the centuries and millennia, and you know,
Yes,
we're so
yes,
far from the original that it no longer makes sense. This is just
yes,
like fresh off the press.
yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you again for joining me, and we'll see
Thank
you
you.
next time. And namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.